Welcome to the Disruptor Network podcast.
Welcome back to another installment of the Growth Project with the Disruptors Network. This project and podcast was put together to help you buy real estate this year. And it's for anybody who's looking to either buy real estate or expand on the real estate they own. And we talk mostly about market conditions and what you can do to get around them. So today's subject is something that I think is very, very important in this market. And I'll talk about a little bit what's surrounding it, but I'm going to talk about red flags.
Ignition. Liftoff.
So what kind of red flags you should be looking for in a seller's market. Now, why am I calling it a seller's market? And I think most of you know, but I'm going to go through it. I'll give you a couple of stats, actually. In the country right now, there are 271,000 homes listed for sale in the whole country. A normal, healthy average is somewhere between 800,000 and a million. So we're about 600,000 homes short of homes that should be listed for sale in the country, which means that we're not even close to being back to a healthy average. So very, very low supply and a high demand. On top of that, you have sellers who have seen equity increase over the last year or two because we've been in a very, very hot market with bidding wars and everything like that. So they have more to play with and less to lose if they sell. So you're dealing with really the sellers being in the driver's seat as far as who's buying homes. Equity since 2010. So the equity somebody has in their home since 2010 has gone from 8 trillion to now 25 trillion. So across the country, we have 25 trillion in equity in sellers' homes, which is a tremendous amount. So we have sellers really in an advantageous place as far as who's got the advantage in this market. You're not going to be able to do a lot of negotiating as a buyer in this market when you go to put a bid on a home. And a lot of the frustration that's coming in for buyers is they're going to look at houses, they're getting outbid constantly, and it gets frustrating, which I understand. I'm a buyer in this market, and it's very, very tough even for me who's in the business and have a lot of experience buying properties to buy properties sometimes. So I understand the frustrations that buyers are facing. And what I really want to be important to you as a buyer, though, is to not overreach, right? Not to take too many risks in buying a property because you're going to regret it down the line. So no matter what we're doing, no matter how long it's taking us to buy this property, we don't want to take on undue risk, right? We want to make sure that we're buying a property that's a good investment long-term and that we're building something long-term with it. So, these are the things that are really important when we get to this. So, with the market on fire and bidding wars being the norm, right? It's important you know some things that could be dangerous when buying. I want you to avoid these red flags when buying. So number one, and this is really, really important, a lot of sellers are asking for no appraisal or inspection contingency. The appraisal and the inspections are both put in place to protect you as a buyer when you purchase a home. I'll explain what it is. An appraisal is the evaluation of a property. So on every single contract, when you go into contract to buy a home, standard is an appraisal contingency. What is an appraisal contingency? That basically says if I'm buying a house for $500,000 and the house appraises for $450,000, then I don't have to buy that home. I can then cancel the contract and get my deposit back. So the appraisal contingency is in there to protect you as a buyer. Now, if you choose to buy the property, you can. But the contingency is there to say, hey, I'm not going to pay $500,000 for a $450,000 property. I want out of the contract. Or it gives you a place to go back to a seller and then negotiate. Like, look, this is what it appraised for. This is what it's really worth. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. So that's one. An inspection contingency is the same thing. So on every contract, you're going to have the right to inspect the property, usually within the first 7 days of you signing that contract. An inspector is going to go in and tell you everything that's functional in the house or not functional. Is the roof okay? Is the HVAC system okay? Is the electric okay? Is there any holes or leaks or problems with the foundation? Anything that could possibly go wrong with the property that you as a buyer and an inexperienced person looking at a house isn't going to see. Even me going into a home. There's a lot of things, even buying homes for 20 years that I don't see that. I need an inspector to tell me, hey, this is wrong and this can be a problem. When you get that inspection report back, you can then go back to the seller and say, hey, these are a list of problems that I need fixed before I buy the property from you, or you can give me money as a credit back so I can fix them myself. But it gives you negotiation room and it protects you from possibly taking on a house that's going to have a problem that's going to be very, very expensive to fix later on. So the appraisal and the inspection contingencies are very, very important. And a lot of sellers are asking those to be waived. A good compromise, instead of waiving your right to have these as a buyer, is to have the right to cancel the deal, but agree not to help the seller to anything else. So basically what you're saying is, I understand it's a seller's market. I understand you don't want to give me an appraisal and inspection contingency. I'm still going to do both. And if neither are okay and I want to back out a deal, I can. but I'm not going to hold you to anything. So if an appraisal's short, I'm not going to come back to you and ask you to negotiate. If there's a problem with the inspection, I'm not going to come back and ask you to fix anything. So what you're saying is that I'm going to still do what I need to protect myself, but I'm not going to hold you liable for it, which puts you in a better position than saying, hey, I'll just waive it because I want the house so badly. That's not a smart move. So what I'm saying to you with that is, that's not something you really want to do. You don't want to go into a situation where, you're putting your investment at risk. So number one is no appraisal or inspection contingencies. Number two, and I face this sometimes, and this is something that you guys should look out for. When you purchase a house, you're going to go inspect the property. Usually an inspection standard is you're there, the realtor's there, and the inspector. Sometimes you'll have sellers who want to stay at the inspections. This is a red flag immediately. The seller is present and does not want to let the inspector into certain areas of the house. I've had this happen before. And it was a seller that was hiding major electrical problems that he was trying to not let us see. So he was like, oh, you can't go in there. You can't go in there. And some sellers are using COVID as the reason they don't want you walking around the house. But if you have a seller who's present at the house and does not want you to let the inspector look in every piece of the house, there can be major issues, plumbing, electric, structural, major issues that they don't want the inspector to see. And I would walk away from that immediately. So if you ever go to a property inspection and you have a seller that does not want to look into the property, that's a major issue that you don't want to put yourself in that position for a long-term expensive investment, right? So that's number two. Number three, the seller's disclosure. So most people don't even know what this is, and buyers usually don't know what this is. The seller's disclosure is a disclosure that the seller fills out as they go into list the properties. When they go to list the property, they have to do a seller's disclosure. That seller's disclosure tells you anything that they know is wrong with the property. Hey, I know that the roof is 30 years old and it's going to need to be fixed soon. Hey, I know that there's a plumbing issue. I know there's an electrical issue. I know that there's issues. They're going to list all those problems that they're aware of. Most people don't read the seller's disclosure. You're going to get it when you go into contract. It's very, very important you go to that seller's disclosure and question some of the problems they think that they may be. It's a long list, and they're going to go through everything about the house. Same things: electric, plumbing, lawn, anything, any flooding problems, any leaks, anything the property's had that they know about. Legally, they have to disclose that to you. If they don't, and later on you find out that they knew about it before they sold you the property, they can be held liable for that, and you can sue for any damages you recover from it. So if you don't go to the seller's disclosure and you don't recognize that they either hid something and or disclosed something and you didn't question it, it's going to be on you as a buyer. So that's number three of things you should really look for as red flags. These are three major red flags. There are other things that I would suggest doing in this seller's market, and mostly having a budget, a true budget, a budget that you know about, that we spoke about in previous podcasts, where you go through all of your expenses and you say, I can afford $2,000 a month. That's very, very important. Having a budget and sticking to that budget. You're going to have to sacrifice in this market to buy the house that you want, but it's important that you stick to the budget that you set for yourself and don't put yourself in a position where you've overstretched yourself when you get into the property and you're not going to be able to do things you need for the property. So that's one. And the second thing is, and this is very, very hard, but I think it's important. When you're looking for a property in this market, with it being a seller's market and bidding wars and getting outbid, you have to be patient. And I know that's very, very difficult for somebody who wants and needs to buy a house and all that stuff. You have to be patient, because what you're getting going through the process of losing bids and not getting houses is an education. You're getting an education every single time you go through that process. And the next property you make a bid on, you're going to know more. You're going to know more what you have to offer. You're going to know more what you're looking for. It's actually a good thing, although it feels very, very hard. But if you're patient and you stick to your budget and you buy a property in this market, which I think you should buy a property in this market, because you're going to see all kinds of articles over the last couple of weeks that say rent has gone up between 20 and 30% in some cities. Between 20 and 30%. That living cost is astronomical compared to fixing your housing costs. Fixing your housing costs today on a house that you're going to be in for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to have so much value down the line, because rent's going to be so much higher than that and over that time period. Rent's not fixed. Rent can go up every single year. So what you're doing is locking in your housing costs, keeping it mostly the same, besides your taxes and insurance possibly changing, but the majority of your housing payment will be the same, and you're locking in value for yourself on a go forward. So in this seller's market, there are some red flags that we went over that you need to go over, and those red flags, again, are no appraisal or inspection contingencies, seller being present at inspection, not letting you see the whole house, not reading the seller's disclosure. Seller's disclosure is super important. Those are three major ones that we need to look for as a red flag in a seller's market. I hope you guys are enjoying this podcast. Go back and check out other episodes. We went over budgeting. We went over how to buy in this market. We're going to keep building our portfolio of information to give you to buy the right house in this market. I hope you guys enjoyed the Growth Project by the Disruptors Network. For all of our other podcasts and our interviews, check us out on YouTube, on Apple Podcast, on Spotify Podcast, on Anchor. Check out any of our channels. My website, ralphdibugnara.com, has it. Thanks for having us in your ears, in your video, and we hope to see you guys soon.